Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Hope all my friends are doing well on this Monday morning. Kind of muggy out there this morning, but we got a lot of tropical moisture that's surging in our direction. And if you've been joining us for Let's Talk Tropics over the last couple of weeks, you were pretty much aware of what was going to be happening early this week as we've been continuing to follow a tropical disturbance over the Bay of Campeche. And it looks like this is probably going to be our next contender when it comes to the 2024 hurricane season. So let's go ahead and get started looking at the traffic cams. As you know, it is a very warm and muggy day across Acadiana. My high temperature that I forecast early today already was busted, so I had to push it back up to 88 degrees, which is what our current temperature is now here in Lafayette. Some sunshine managed to peek through there, even though we had those rains early this morning. And speaking of the rains, not a whole lot of coverage locally right now, but it is starting to pick up over southeastern portions of Louisiana, and I think a lot of this is probably going to be shoving in our direction as we go through the next several hours. So rain chance is going to go ahead and stay at 90%. So let's get right to it. The tropical weather outlook, most of you have already seen this. A pretty high chance for development now over the Bay of Campeche, about 70% according to the National Hurricane Center, and at last check, they were going to be sending a plane out there. I'll have to double check to see if that is still the case. But a pretty high chance out here over parts of the southern portion of the Gulf of Mexico. And another area out here over the Atlantic Ocean is actually a frontal boundary with a bit of a low pressure area that's on the tail end of it that's going to get cut away from the main cold front, and then what's left of this is expected to kind of drift off toward the west. So we might be talking about something closer to the east coast a little bit later on this week. But let's go ahead and stick with the Gulf of Mexico because that is what would be affecting us here in the Acadiana region. As you can see, there is already a lot of cloud cover. There's a whole lot of moisture out here over the middle part of the Gulf of Mexico. And that right there is going to be surging toward the coast. So we are getting a little bit of a break right now. Will that last for the rest of the afternoon? I think we're still going to get some daytime heating and pop up a few thunderstorms here and there in the Acadiana region. But a lot of this moisture that's out here over the Gulf of Mexico is going to be surging northward. So there could be some nocturnal storms in the offshore waters tonight, and then those could move in by early tomorrow morning. But we're focusing more of our attention down here over the Bay of Campeche, where it seems like we're getting more of a cluster of thunderstorms tending to develop. And as we look at the Central American satellite too, you see a broad rotation of low pressure here, and we call that the Central American gyre. So if that's a new term for you, the Central American gyre is basically like a big broad area of low pressure, and you can see how the winds are coming in from this direction to the south and kind of rotating around this way to the north, and it kind of comes back down here. So it's just kind of a big broad area of low pressure, and Central American gyre, just another thing to add to your weather vocabulary there, but it really is a big broad area of low pressure. But we now have an official disturbance. This is 91L. And it is currently over the southern part of the Bay of Campeche, where we're starting to see pretty much a low pressure center that's out here right now. You got winds coming in from the northeast here and more of a southeasterly wind over here. So we think we're starting to see a low pressure area trying to develop. And a lot of the computer models, now that we have an official disturbance, the computer models are making more runs specifically on this area as a tropical system. And some of the early model runs have some meandering going on here down over the southern part of the Bay of Campeche, at least for the first day or two. So we're talking about Monday and Tuesday. It's probably just going to stay in this area. And then a lot of the models kind of drifted off toward the west-northwest or the northwest as we get toward the middle part of the week. And here's another set of some of those tropical models that come down. And this one's more aligned with the GFS, which again shows a little meandering here down to the south, and then eventually more of a northwesterly track toward the western coast of the Gulf of Mexico. So as far as anything developing, this could be a tropical depression, perhaps a weak tropical storm. Most of the computer models are bringing this up into the tropical storm status. So that's anything that's up here in the green. So you're talking about between now and 24 to 48 hours is where we would see the possibility of this developing. Now, beyond that line, going out 3 days here, past this, you see everything is kind of down here in the tropical depression or lower zone. But I do think this is because about this point is when it's going to start to interact with land, and that's why we would see a gradual weakening. But several of the tropical models are going to give this the first name, which would be Alberto. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. There are quite a few things that are going against any kind of development. This is just a look at the current wind shear, and that little broad low pressure area is down here, but if it tried to move northward toward the northern Gulf Coast, it's going to run into all of that wind shear there. There's some lighter wind shear here on the western side of that, which might give it some potential, but it's so close to land that it would be interacting with that as well. So that's why most of the models are pretty much staying with a tropical depression or maybe a very low-end tropical storm. But let's go ahead and roll this out to the midweek. We'll take us out to Wednesday, and the GFS at least has a low coming in on the South Texas coast, maybe the northern Mexican coast, but you can see there's a ton of wind shear here, and then its interaction with land off toward the west is yet another reason why the models are most likely thinking this will stay a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm. Now, what are the results for us? Now, this is not going to be a big wind producer for us. It's going to cause some higher tides along the coast and also keep our rain chances considerably higher. This is the Euro total rainfall map for this week. So this is going through the early part of the day on Friday morning, and you can see it keeps a big chunk of the heaviest rains in the offshore waters. But even right here along the southwest Louisiana coast, it's picking up maybe 2 to 3 inches of rain over the course of the week, and then more of our inland parishes here in Acadiana are more in that 1 to 2 inch range there. So the Euro is a little bit tighter with the rains and keeping a lot of the stuff offshore. Just to give you a peek here, this is the GFS model, which first, what you might notice, it has a considerably higher amount of water coming down over much of Texas, somewhere over the 10-inch range and maybe even higher than that on the scale. And it also spreads in some of those 2 to 4 inch rainfall ranges here in Acadiana, generally along and south of I-10. Now, when you get this kind of a tropical atmosphere in place, just the afternoon thunderstorms that develop with this are very healthy rain producers. So even though both models are indicating we could see a 2 to 4 inch rain over the course of a week, don't be surprised if you get under one of these slow-moving tropical downpours that can put down 2, 3, or 4 inches of rain over the course of an hour or two. So that is the potential too. So we do have a flood risk here in Acadiana. Most of the region is in a level 2. This is kind of like the severe weather risk, but this is talking about excessive rainfall specifically and why we think we could see some flooding across Acadiana. So level 2 at least for today, but you can see in the graphic there, it does say a multi-day event here. So this isn't just for today. This is going to be for the next couple of days as this system kind of winds its way across the western part of the Gulf of Mexico. There's also a coastal hazard with this as well, with the pressure gradient tightening between low pressure to our south and a big ridge of high pressure that's off the east coast. Those winds are going to be funneling in out of the southeast, so the tides are going to be running above normal, and there is a coastal flood watch for Cameron and Vermilion parishes where the tides could be running as high as 3 feet above normal high tide, while there's a coastal flood advisory for Iberia, St. Mary, and into Terrebonne parishes down to the southeast. And that coastal flood advisory indicates we could see tides up to 2 feet above those predicted tide levels, or above the average high tide. So about 1.5 to 2 feet above normal for some of our coastal parishes, and during high tide, that could flood some of those coastal roadways. So do keep that in mind if you have to do some traveling over the southern parts of our coastal parishes. Let's go ahead and just real quick check out anything else that's going on out there. The Caribbean, for the most part, is relatively clear right now. Although we've got a new tropical wave that's right here that's going to work its way into the eastern part of the Caribbean. As this goes off toward the west, is this going to bring us anything else? Well, we'll kind of take a look at the extended models and see what we've got. And on the Atlantic satellite, we've got a number of tropical waves that are currently out over the Atlantic Ocean. The one I showed you here, you got another one way out here, and there's one coming off the coast of Africa. But you do have some dry air up here, and you also have some Saharan dust that could be affecting those particular tropical waves. So at this point, we're not seeing any extra stuff developing out to our east. But anything that would try to develop over the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico or the Western Atlantic would certainly have a decent chance based on the water temperatures that are all over 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The magic number on your Celsius scale is basically 27. So you can see there that virtually all of the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Western Atlantic are development zones for tropical systems, are all over that 80-degree mark. So we're going to be seeing anything being able to sustain itself because it's got the proper fuel there. And I will tell you that the tropical cyclone heat potential is also quite high, especially over the Western Caribbean and the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. Not as much, though, over the Bay of Campeche. So, again, we don't have that high-octane fuel over the western part of the Gulf for our disturbance to be able to work with. So let's go ahead as we finish up here. Let's go out beyond our first tropical system that is expected to move on to the Texas or Mexican coast. But as you look farther down the road, and this is taking us out 2 weeks, you can see that there's another spin-off. So here's our first low here, kind of drifting off to the west, and then it kind of slides around and dances around for a while, and then boom, here we go. We get this next low pressure area. And it's not the only one. There's another kind of a little spin-off of this that's going to be over the possibly the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico as well. So at this point, it's not really conclusive of what we're going to be seeing here over the next couple of weeks, but it is a good guide to show us that the models are showing that the tropics are starting to wake up. And now, of course, is the time to make sure that you're prepared for anything coming in our direction because we've got nothing going on locally. There's a lot of supplies that are out there for everyone to go ahead and grab. So these next couple of weeks are going to be really important. Not expecting anything huge to come in the Gulf of Mexico, but it is at least showing us that the Atlantic Basin is waking up. It's supposed to do this every year, and we'll just have to wait and see where these things go. But I will say that this low that's over the Bay of Campeche, we were talking about this. I went back and it looked like about June the 5th. We started talking about that. So this was about 12 days ago. So if you stay with Let's Talk Tropics and you stay up with the forecast each and every day, even though there's going to be some wild swings in the forecast and some crazy stuff that folks are going to put on social media, if you look at it every day and you watch model run to model run, you start to see the trends, and it does help to get you prepared several days in advance, especially when we've got a number of different possibilities that could be out there for the next couple of weeks. So I really hope you enjoy our little lunchtime talks here on Let's Talk Tropics. If you do like this video and subscribe to the channel, tell your friends too, and make sure you turn on those notifications. That way you know when we go live at any time here on Acadiana Weather Today. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on Tuesday.